bit about the Global Wind Energy Council, some of the activities you're involved in, and what you're up to support offshore wind on a global level?
Yeah, so the Global Wind Energy Council represents the kind of big wind companies, both equipment suppliers, turbine manufacturers, and also developers, also investors in wind energy, a lot of smaller supply chain companies, and we also bring together the wind associations around the world. So, Renewable UK is a member of GWEC, and Wind Europe and the American Association. And our role really is to try and open up new markets for wind energy by working with governments and stakeholders in the industry to try and develop the right kind of frameworks for kind of creating thriving wind industries. And that's what we've been doing around the world for the last 10 years.
Very good. And yesterday you addressed the Global Offshore Wind Conference on the topic of global markets. Can you give us some of the key takeouts of that talk?
Yeah, I think the situation we're in is the offshore wind industry in Europe has kind of had this great journey over the last couple of decades really, and is now at a point where we can really industrialize at scale and also go out and present a very competitive source of new energy capacity on a kind of large industrial scale. So that industry is now ready to go global, and it has started to go global, and we see a kind of significant speeding up now of that process of globalization. There's a number of markets now that have either started creating capacity at a large scale or already have been doing so. So, give a few examples from yesterday. China has been doing offshore wind for quite a while, and there's now a significant speeding up, and we actually expect China to become the largest single market from next year onwards. We've seen Taiwan implement a very ambitious program to add 5.5 gigawatts of offshore wind. We've seen really big investors and developers get involved in that market, and the whole industry spring up quite quickly. Japan is now kind of ready to come to market and create a kind of framework for adding large-scale offshore wind capacity. But there's a whole host of other markets as well. There's Korea. We're seeing projects in Vietnam, and then there's also a whole bunch of markets that haven't done anything so far, but which their governments are looking at very, very actively. So GWEC, together with the World Bank, has brought a large delegation from non-OECD countries to this event. And we also held a seminar with the UK BEIS, the UK Business and Energy Ministry, and we're taking those country delegations around the UK to look at the experience of offshore wind here, and we've already had very, very strong indications from those governments that they want to create offshore wind programs. And I'm talking about places where like Morocco, South Africa, Indonesia, Vietnam, so places that haven't done any offshore wind at all, but they're looking at it now as a very attractive, large-scale option for creating zero carbon energy.
Fantastic. You've spoken in the past about the need to accelerate the pace of change across the world. Are you seeing signs that's starting to happen?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to happen because countries all over the world are starting to kind of create frameworks to be able to do offshore wind. The question is it happening fast enough for the kind of carbon reduction targets that we need? And here's the question. A lot of countries, especially in East Asia, some countries are still doing coal and adding new coal thermal capacity, and it's not even because they want to or think that's a good thing. It's simply because they see that as being the only option at the moment. Those countries are becoming increasingly aware that offshore wind represents a much better alternative. The question is, can we get the investment in and get the companies in and create the legislative frameworks in a way that allows them to do that quickly?
You mentioned earlier the first intergovernmental forum on offshore wind that you're running in partnership with the World Bank. Can you tell me a bit about that? Who's involved and what's on the agenda?
Yeah, so the World Bank is running programs to promote and to help countries adopt clean energy. The IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, has invested very significantly in onshore wind over the years, and now wants to create financing streams for offshore wind. And so part of that program is to work with emerging market economies or non-OECD countries to to make that happen and to create the right environment and framework for offshore wind to become technology, one of the main technologies of choice in those markets. So, as I said, there was significant interest from a whole number of countries. I think there was 13 or 14 countries sent delegations to this first conference in London, and the idea is to develop in-country programs for the governments, with the governments that are interested in taking this further and creating offshore wind industries. And every indication we've had is that there are a number of countries that are very interested in doing this.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.